McPherson's been a great friend of the Chamber and United Way. We met about 3 years ago, I believe. Actually, I think it was 3 years ago this week, because there was an article in the Tribune, and the headlines read, "Seven teens in 6 weeks had taken their own lives." And so after reading that article, I got a hold of Katey, and we've been working with her and United Way, gosh, pretty intensely for the last 3 years. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Katey, and Katey, you can maybe introduce yourself and give a little background, because I know you've held several different roles. The role that you hold now for us is very important. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and give your presentation.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me here this morning. My name is Katey McPherson. And as Sally said, we met a few years ago. I started this journey of youth mental health probably, at the start of my career. I started as a high school teacher and then became a guidance counselor, then became a school administrator. And 4 years ago, left public education to go on the road and scream from the rooftops. I was pretty frustrated as an administrator at just technology and how it was impacting our students' mental health, as well as I was writing thousands of discipline referrals on behaviors that were happening in and coming to school. So my passion is youth mental health, social media responsibility, and then through our local and regional struggles with our youth, have become a really huge advocate for suicide prevention. So everything that I'm presenting here today, you can find on my website, which is kateymcpherson.com. There are several people on this call that have helped me get to where I am. So Mark and Sally and Harmony are three of those people. Over the last 24 years, I counted up the other day, almost 70,000 kids have gone past my eyes under my supervision alongside of some wonderful colleagues. And I'm super proud of that and so thankful, because the kids and the teenagers that I've worked with have really just taught me everything I know. I'm also a mother of 4 tweens and teens, ages almost 12, that's 2 of them, 13 and 14. And so I reside with a small estrogen tide pool daily. And so a lot of what I learn is also firsthand knowledge from my own children. So today I don't know what's going on with, there. Today I just kind of wanted to give an overview of what's going on with our youth. Mark and I have gone back and forth in roundtable discussion about what's going on with our kiddos, but just if you're not aware of some of the things that I feel are intersecting, this generation doesn't know life without technology. About 15 years ago, right when I was transitioning from teacher to counselor, one of my roles was to help students plan their college schedule or plan to go to college or career. And really saw an uptick in the academic rigor that we were pushing. I mean, basically starting in 5th grade now, students are choosing which math do I need to take in 5th grade so that in 12th grade I end up having what I need to go to an elite college or at least a university. And so we're really pushing academic rigor, even starting in kindergarten now. It's having a tremendous impact on the way kids view school. The stress that they're under, the anxiety and depression that we see in our teenagers is a direct result, partially, from the academic rigor. And so I'm a huge advocate of having balance in our kids' lives. In conjunction with that, we as administrators decided to remove rough and tumble play from the playgrounds, because around 1999 to 2001, we had 2 major significant events, one being the shooting at Columbine High School. That was the first major school shooting that people can remember. It was obviously a mass tragedy. And then shortly thereafter, 9/11. And so between those 2 events, adults in the world and anybody that was bringing a child into the world probably said to themselves, like, I'm going to hunker down. Nobody's going to hurt my baby. Nobody's going to shoot up a school. And the world is a very unsafe place to be. And so that kind of translated to our playgrounds, where we started to add on this academic rigor and then say, like, our playgrounds, you can't touch each other. You can't push and shove. That's bullying. And so this generation of students, so anybody ages 0 to 25, is really growing up with the assumption or the worldview that the world's an unsafe place. And if you look at major cities and their violent statistics, violent crimes have actually gone down over the last 15 to 20 years. And so this notion as parents that we have and community members that the world's unsafe is kind of false, to be honest. And so what I would see on the playground was a lot of inability to solve their own problems, inability to cope, and inability to stand up for themselves. And we see that over and over as this generation tries to launch not only into college and career, but just to thrive in general. And certainly COVID-19 has had a tremendous impact on that as well. So again, some other things that are intersecting with technology, with how these children are growing up. Our foods have changed. And then this constant media stream that they have. I mean, they are true activists. That's one of the silver linings that I want to point out about this generation. We've never had a more civically minded generation, and they use social media and technology to activate that. And so when you look at, for example, Parkland, regardless of how you feel about guns, those children were able to take one simple hashtag and get millions of people to march in Washington and other places across the country in support of gun control. And so it doesn't take much for them to rally around each other. So I do want to point out that technology in that way, they are complete geniuses. And if you're parenting right now or grandparenting right now, you've probably seen your children or grandchildren at home during COVID doing some really cool things and teaching their parents how to do those things. And so I don't think technology is all bad, but the reality is these kids don't know life without it. And we've done a horrific job of teaching them how to use it for good. Many of our schools are not using any sort of digital citizenship program. We've pretty much just handed 10-year-old cell phones and said, good luck, here's the World Wide Web, here's 4 million strangers. Good luck. And they're crashing and burning for a reason. So some of the findings that I don't know what is going on with my screen, but hopefully you can see it. Some of the findings that we found is we've gotten so far away from the principles of early childhood development and really what all human beings need. And those are the 4 things I have listed here. We need nature. We need to move our bodies. We need physical touch. We need hugs. We need to be touching each other. We need rough and tumble play. We need for boys to be able to push each other on the playground and say, knock it off. We need for girls to be able to assert themselves and connect with each other in ways that we frame as mean girls. And what I would say to you as a mother of 4 girls is girls are not born mean, and they like to connect with each other verbally, and certainly in conflict, that's okay. And so when we look at like what's going on in school and what's going on outside of school, we've gotten away from nature, we've gotten away from movement, we've gotten away from touching each other at school is not allowed. And depending on the family unit, you know, you may have a family that's not very affectionate. And so kids that are not getting the physical touch are really suffering. And so whenever anybody asks me, how can I make my family better? That's my 4 go-to things. Are you getting out in nature? Are you moving your bodies? Are you giving each other hugs? And are you connecting off of technology with each other in real ways? And that really is a quite, I think at least, a simple recipe to move the needle on a health and wellness standpoint, as well as to help your kiddos. I don't know why that's going backwards. I'm so confused, but part of this generation's issue as well. Prior to age 2, we have taken about 2,000 photos of our kiddos. So when they have access to a device, a lot of parents will ask me, like, why is my daughter taking so many photos of herself? Why did my son video record a fight at school? The only thing this generation knows about life is that it's to be documented. everywhere you go, you need to check in. Everywhere you go, you need to take a photo. If you're parents, we are super guilty of like, get together for the perfect photo. You're not smiling. Emma, move over here. Ella, come on, smile for the camera so that we can get that perfect curated photo. And so the takeaway message for this generation is everything needs to be perfect. And everywhere I go, I need to tell the whole world about it. And so I do not blame them a bit. We got swept up in it. Once we got the shiny iPhones, we started this. And I'm not saying don't memorialize fun and important things you're doing in your life, but I do think there is a time and place to enjoy where you are and what you're doing. And so this has had a tremendous impact on our female students for sure. Just the way the female brain is wired to compare yourself to others, the body image issues, the self-esteem issues. This is definitely a factor when we look at anxiety, depression, and self-harm amongst our youth. One of the things that I speak on a lot is the impact of technology on the developing brain. We actually don't have enough longitudinal data to say this causes this. Certainly parents would like to say this is burning your brain out and you're never going to get those brain cells back. What we do know about the developing brain, thank God, and our own adult brains is that it's constantly regenerating and it's very the neuroplasticity of the brain is amazing. So if your child or grandchild is playing 10 hours of video games for one day, they're gonna be okay. If they're doing that for 14 days in a row, yeah, we're starting to get concerned about the brain. And so the brain on the top shows really good blood flow, neurons are firing, kids engaged in a really great task. The brain on the bottom is where we start to get concerned about our kids, where neurons are starting to pull apart, blood flow is going down, that body probably hasn't moved in a while. Dopamine is like dousing on the brain during video games and social media. Pornography is a huge issue amongst our youth as well. And so we really want to make sure with devices that they're not behind bedroom doors, that there's a central charging station at night, and that kids are getting really good sleep. One of the other silver linings of COVID that I've talked to kids about is they're finally getting the 8 to 12 hours of sleep that they need, and they're feeling better. When we're in school, when we're pushing academic rigor, sports, activities, just grinding these kids, we are seeing elevated levels of anxiety and depression based on the lack of sleep. So if I could give, again, just a golden nugget, make sure you're getting enough sleep and make sure your kids are getting enough sleep, because it is a crucial factor, especially when we look at the baseline markers for suicidal ideation. Sleep is a crucial factor in that as well. As I mentioned, kind of what I try to teach parents and community members is we really need to hone in on this growth mindset for our kids. What they see is that top of the iceberg. They see on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, on all of their social media that the world is perfect. She has, better hair than me. She's skinnier. She's playing that sport. She got a scholarship. That's all filtered, as you know. What they don't know about and what we don't talk enough about with them is, how did you persist? How did you get to where you are? How do you get to live in Mesa, Arizona and have these awesome jobs that you have? Like, how did you get to where you are? Because right now everything is so instant for them. They get really frustrated and stressed out that they can't have what they want right away as far as working towards a goal. And so really talking to them about that, I think, is super important to keep that health and wellness in check. Especially, I used to work in the Scottsdale School District, obviously very affluent area, and these kids, like, they had everything and then some, but they were crumbling. They were falling apart. They did not have coping skills. They weren't very resilient because everything had been handed to them. They had never really had to work for anything. And so when they had their first breakup or their first failure, or they didn't get the scholarship they thought they were going to get, they literally fell to pieces to the point where they were in crisis. And so if we can help them understand that persistence is a thing and that a growth mindset is, you're not there yet, you're working on it, and there are strategies and tools to get you there, I think that can help them as they cope. I'd like to show just a short video. This is called Childhood 2.0. It's a brand new documentary that just came out. If you've seen Screenagers, it's similar, but I just want to highlight kind of some of the things that are being shown to our kids that are impacting their brains.
A long time ago, families were in communities. They were local, they were small.
I was born in the very depths of the Great Depression. I was put to work carrying wood, carrying water. I knew how to shell peas. I knew how to break beans. We still didn't have electricity.
Two Instagram accounts.
I use Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok.
TikTok and Fortnite. I can just scroll for hours on end. 11 hours a day.
It's been 8, 9.
Maybe like 12.
It's actually been a way that we can keep track of them out there in the real world where things really are scary.
The lives of kids were sort of changing slowly for a while. And then all of a sudden, those kids were able to get on social media, and that's when everything skyrocketed.
The rates at which they're experiencing problems continues to increase.
We also know that the teen suicide rate increased 56%.
Last year alone, we received over 18 million reports of international and domestic online child sexual abuse.
We have traded a false sense of safety and security for actually putting kids in riskier situations. I call it the race to the bottom of the brainstem. So it starts with techniques like pull to refresh.
Pretty much every guy has like an addiction to it, but no one talks about it.
It's just
like nudes of girls go. At the beginning of the year, there were multiple suicides before school even started. Children, all hours of the day.
one thought it'd be a funny idea to talk the other one into committing suicide, and she did it. She's dead.
After about 6 weeks, we were able to crack his phone.
Kids right now are going to experience the worst of what we're going through.
I won't. Do you think your parents know that this happens?
No, my kid won't do that. My kid would never. My kid's school isn't like that. You're wrong.
Because what they see, they feel neurologically compelled to do.
Right now, we're effectively living in an experiment. How is this going to affect us? We'll find out.
So if you get a chance, it's about an hour-long documentary. It's called Childhood 2.0. It is just truly, what I love about it is the kids tell the story. The kids, often these movies are adults talking about it. These are teenagers and younger kids talking about what they've experienced, whether it's being exposed to pornography, being preyed upon online, how hard it is to be a teenage girl with Instagram, all of the things that they're being exposed to. It's definitely a great watch. It's free, it's on YouTube, you can stream it. It's excellent. So it gives you really keen insight into what they're up against. So kind of transitioning over to what we're seeing regionally, locally, Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert, Southeast Valley. There are so many different reasons, and Mark and I have talked about this at length, but we are really seeing an escalation in anxiety, depression, stress levels, and suicide. This is the 2010 to 2018 comparison of National College Health Association stats treated for anxiety and overwhelming anxiety. So you can see there's been a pretty heavy duty increase in both of those. More than average stress and thoughts of suicide have gone up 100%. So again, so many different factors go into that. Each family is different, each kid is different, but these are college freshmen. What I will point out about this is this generation, again, amazing humans that have really destigmatized youth mental health and said, it's okay not to be okay. So when you look at these stats, they're alarming, but at the same time, I'd like you to think about this generation has been told, if you're not okay, come to us. If you're not feeling well, come to us. If you're stressed out, come to us. Come to us, come to us, come to us. Some adults are like, oh, whoa, I didn't mean that. Like, I don't know how to handle that. You're coming to me, thank you, but I don't have the resources that you need. So we send a double mixed message when we do that, and they get very frustrated with us. And that's why they start to go down down south, so to speak, and spiral because the resources that we purport that we have for them are not available, and or we don't know how to be a trusted adult. I do a ton of trainings on truly like, how can you be a trusted adult? How can you be socially competent in this world? The only way you can triage a situation with a student from the I generation is to watch documentaries like Childhood 2.0. If you don't know what they're up against, you can't speak to and respond in a current and relevant way. And so really, as you look at these national mental health trends, it's alarming, it's scary, but it also speaks to they are ready for help. They want an emotional blueprint that when I feel this way, whether I'm 10 years old or 25, what are the coping skills and strategies as an adult that you can help me hone in on and utilize when I'm in the trenches? And that's really where the breakdown is. We've spent so much time getting them academically prepared. We have completely ignored typical coping skill things. To go back to the playground, I don't know how many of you were bullied or had a bullying situation or just a crappy kid. I remember just being out in the neighborhood and like when somebody was scrappy to me, like I just spoke back to them, and or, there was some pushing and shoving at times. Our kids aren't allowed to do that. So the yuck sits on their heart and the yuck sits on their central nervous system. And so when you look at this anxiety and depression, they have no outlet to get it out unless their family has implemented some sort of strategy where they are doing something, yoga, meditation, exercise, anything they can do to kind of get some of those yucky feelings out. So I would encourage you not only to share these stats with people you work with, anybody that can get the word out, but the underlying message for me is these kids want help, they're coming for the help, and we have to have the help ready for them. But both as a city, also as school districts, also faith-based communities, law enforcement, like all hands on deck. This is a community responsibility. Sally mentioned that we met 3 years ago. So I have never really had a big mouth until 2017. I really I advocate, but I'm pretty quiet about it. But 6 kids died between Mother's Day and Labor Day out in Queen Creek, Higley, Gilbert area. And I just, as a former school person, I went to the media and I'm like, what's going on? You need to highlight this. And they said, well, we don't cover suicide because of copycats and things like that. I'm like, okay, well, what can we veil it as to cover it? Because I'm done. I don't even know these children, but this is not normal. I have been on a public school campus for 20 plus years. I have never lost more than 1 student per year, and 1 is too many. And so that really started, and Sally was such an integral piece of this series of town halls where we started spreading the good word. We were able to pass a law last year. We have policies in place. School districts have improved so much on what they're offering. Mark has been able to engage the faith community. We're really doing some really great work. Next month, this whole regional contagion of suicide will be showcased in Esquire magazine. So we're making some tremendous strides in our community. We have tons of mayor support. So I want you to know that regionally and locally, there are some really great things happening. And I want to also outline law enforcement has been a huge supporter and a huge part of that. And so I'm super proud to be connected to those people as well. So really, when I go out and speak, whether it's a conference, parents, educators, my goal is, are you approaching your organization as well as the community with a public health model approach to mental health? And so if you think about like the Jump Rope for Heart campaign, we front loaded the entire country with Jump Rope for Heart, like Be Heart Smart, all of these, PSAs, everything we could do. So as a little kid, you learned about your heart. That's prevention. So that's in this all category. The whole world knew about heart health. Some people needed some help with their heart. And so this category of some, that's our intervention category, where we're taking a select smaller number of people and educating and making them more aware and getting them specialized services. And then we had obviously some people that were in critical condition with their hearts and really were 2 steps away from dying. And so we took those people and we got them even more specialized help. So as you look at your own organization, your own family, your own network of people, I'd love for you to kind of take this approach with them. Like, what are we doing at a macro level to make everybody aware about this? What can we do for our employees or people that we care about or students to really give them some specialized care if they're struggling? And then who and how are we identifying this really critical group of students or employees or caregivers that really need this super, super specialized crisis help? So when you look at that from a school perspective, I'll show you another slide of how I teach educators and administrators to identify who are your tier 1 kids. Like, those are the kids that are doing really well. Who are your tier 2 kids? Who are the kids that are like, they're having a temporary struggle and we want to get them back to wellness? And then who are your tier 3 kids that are super struggling, that are really in crisis, they're self-harming, they're thinking about suicide, they're clinically depressed? How do we reach out to agencies like Mesa United Way, Mesa Chamber, Mesa Law Enforcement, school district resources, and other nonprofits like Community Bridges that can help those kiddos when they're in crisis? We continue to struggle in this middle lane. We are not identifying kids before they move into crisis. And our crisis resources are horrific. We have 7 million people in Maricopa County. We have 225 beds for teens. So if your teen is in crisis, you are on a wait for at least 2 days to get them in a bed to be evaluated. I actually, 2 nights ago, I got up to get a drink of water, and you're not supposed to do this, by the way, but I checked my phone, and a woman said, 2 years ago, you helped my son. He ran away. Remember, you found him in a bush. He is suicidal tonight. I don't know what to do. Where should I go? So I didn't see the message. She went to Gilbert Mercy. Gilbert Mercy does not have an adolescent psych unit. So she was just sitting in the ER with her suicidal child. So identifying resources up front, you want to identify those resources when your kids are doing well. I was able to help her get into a facility that night, but we were really lucky that they had a bed open. And so he's there for 5 to 8 days. He's safe, they're stabilizing him, but that is a rare occurrence that there's a bed open at night. And so when we talk about this village that you and I are part of being a good villager is when people come to you to find help, you have to be ready with the resources. And so we have been working on that regionally, locally. I know Mesa's done such a great job of citywide having those resources available, from homeless to veterans to youth to faith. All of those things are in place. But I feel like people need a play card. I feel like you need it saved in your phone, in your favorites. I always tell people, go to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline website and screenshot it and put it in your favorites. Go to Teen Lifeline, screenshot their phone number and text line and put it in your favorites, because by and large, somebody will come to you and say, whether it's an employee, a friend, a relative, like my teenager's really struggling, or my young adult's really struggling, or I'm really struggling, and having those phone numbers just to reach out to have somebody help you is crucial. The Teen Lifeline that we have is now, that number is on the back of all student IDs in Maricopa County. Yay for that. They have seen a 15% increase in calls to their hotline and a 50% increase in texts during COVID to their text line. So that is actually fantastic news. Teenagers and their parents are reaching out for help. So I'm super encouraged by that. So I always tell staffs of people and people that I'm speaking to, if you are not courageous enough to call another parent and say, I saw this on my kid's phone, and your kid said this or did this, and I just want you to know as a fellow person, we're not going to save kids, because your children know well before we do when something's going down. School shootings. You will see a teenager on CNN talking about, well, yeah, he was really weird, or he was kind of quiet, or like, yeah, he said some things online, but I just discounted them. The kids know. They know 6 to 8 weeks before we do when something's going to happen. But we don't have the system in place where they feel comfortable coming to us. When I talk to kids about, why didn't you tell somebody that Chloe was struggling? Why didn't you tell somebody that you knew Brayden might try to shoot up the school? The two responses I get are, number one, my parents would take my device away and I am not willing to live without my phone. Number two, they say, I did sort of tell somebody and they either super overreacted or they did nothing. And so I just stopped going to that person because I can't trust them. And so they are not willing to lose their phone because it's their lifeline. And I do a whole ditty on taking phones away as discipline. There's a fine balance there because that is a support network. And if you have a child that's struggling with grades, that's struggling with behavior, that's struggling with friendship, that's being defiant, that's being a total you-know-what to you, and you take a phone away and you don't replace it with yourself and relationship building and skill building, the behavior is not going to change and you're putting that student at risk for further behavior. And so you really need to be mindful about how we're viewing these devices because they really are a source of information about not only how your kid's doing, but how the friendship group is doing as well. I don't know what's going on with my next slide. No, okay. So lastly, just to wrap up, hello, I see you. Just to wrap up, what our kids and what every adult in the world wants is to be seen, heard, and loved. One of the greatest learnings is this slide. I have a great colleague named Travis Webb. He is actually in Mesa. He's a bishop in Mesa, but he's a trauma therapist as well. And this is part of his teaching is, what are kids after? Kids are after attachment needs being met. Are the adults in my life are okay? Am I okay? Is this world that I'm living in okay? Right now, I'm not sure a lot of us feel like any of that is okay. And so to be a 12-year-old wondering like, is my life stable? Can I go to a safe school where I feel supported by adults is absolutely crucial. And sometimes as adults, we do some crappy things. We yell at our kids, we say rude things, we don't meet the attachment needs. And so repairing that is essential. And so I always talk to people about what you see in front of you is a really crappy behavior. Behind the behavior is a kid screaming, do you see me? Do you hear me? And do you love me? It's really, truly that simple, but we focus on the behavior in front of us and we really don't ever get down to the emotion that's behind the behavior. And so when you think about a kid in a classroom, I used to get boys in general sent to me, you know, he was blurting out, he was off task, he was being a jerk, he mouthed off, he called me a name, and they would send him to my office and I would sit down with that kid and I would spend 20 minutes with them. I'd have a great conversation because they had me for 20 minutes, seeing them, hearing them, and loving them. And they felt like a trusted adult, even though they were in trouble with me. I still held them accountable. They still got disciplined. Those needs were being met. And so if you think about a kiddo at home that doesn't have those attachment needs met, and then coming to school and maybe isn't getting those needs met either, it's no wonder that we're seeing some of the behaviors and stress and anxiety and depression that we're seeing. And so it's really essential that we put our own devices down and really figure out, how can I see this person, whether it's adult or child? You know, I look at Facebook as a prime example. I'm sure you have a friend that posts like 24/7. I'm eating soup, I'm tying my shoe, I'm going shopping, here's me in my car. That is an adult screaming to the world, do you see me, do you hear me, do you love me? Facebook and social media is a great way to inauthentically meet attachment needs. It's like eating a Skittle and thinking you're eating salmon. It's so false and it does not meet those needs. And so when you see people doing that, instead of maybe snoozing them or unfollowing them, reach out to them like, hey, how are you doing? What's up? Because those attachment needs for adults are just the same as they are for our kiddos as well. So I talked about this public health model approach at home and at school. So if I'm looking at what we need to do for kids at school, it's here are all our kids that are doing really well. So in a school of 4,000, we probably have 2,900 that are doing decently well. What we need to focus on is when kids go from well-being into distress, what is our emergency response system that's capturing them in the safety net? What resources do we have? What people do we have? What programs do we have? What services do we have? Do we have a place where they can just go and chill out if they are having a horrible day? And that doesn't mean that you're saying to them, you still have to do your history assignment while you're sitting in this place. It's saying like, I see you, I see you're struggling, I see not much is gonna go on today. So why don't you take 10 minutes, gather yourself, let's do some breathing exercises, and then get you back to class. As these students that may struggle go from distress into crisis, we in Maricopa County specifically do not have this figured out. We have not figured out how to see the signs of distress and respond before they move into crisis. And so if I were to, just really pray for anything, it would be more resources on the front of distress into crisis so that we can capture them before anything tragic happens. In the 3 years since I've met Sally, we're probably close to 65 students that have taken their lives. And that is just regionally between, let's say, Riggs Road in South Chandler, Queen Creek area, all the way to the 60 in Mesa. It is I'd say 15 to 25 mile radius maximum. And so that is a horrific stat. And it's when we're really working on getting in front of. There's no specific candidate. Obviously, suicide touches all groups, but our regional candidate typically is male and between the ages of 12 and 18. We have lost a couple 10 and 11-year-olds, but overwhelmingly when I look at who we have lost, young males 4-to-1 over our females. On that front, however, girls typically attempt 4 times as many times to take their lives as boys do. Boys just typically use more lethal means, typically firearms or hanging. So as we look kind of at this regional contagion that has kept pace even through COVID, I would say both genders and all races and ethnicities are at risk. And so really figuring this public health model approach out, I think that's where the gold lies. So I've said a whole lot in a very short amount of time. I'll open for questions if you have any of them. I see there's some in the chat.
Hey, do you want to just address what's in the chat first?
Sure. If I can get it's like weird, my cursor is like not.
So first question, have the local numbers of teen suicides gone down since school's been digital?
No, we are on pace, unfortunately, regionally. So I can't speak to Maricopa County or the city of Phoenix, but regionally, we are on pace to lose a student every 6 to 8 weeks, and that pace has continued through COVID. We have actually seen more substance abuse overdoses as well, some lethal, some not, during this time. What has slowed down is the feeling of distress because kids are getting more sleep, but the suicide rate has maintained.
There's a note here from Mark. I would recommend Pen 15 for some amazing insight into the lives of junior high girls before devices. Kids haven't changed much, just new ways of being mean. Sherry Friend, do you recommend teens watch the documentary or just parents?
I would recommend so it depends on your level of comfort with things like sexting, pornography, and predation. So I'm a huge advocate of having big conversations early, even as early as 10. However, the documentary is pretty explicit about pornography, sexting, and predation. So if you are not comfortable with that, I would not have anybody younger than 13 or 14 watch with you. But if you have anybody in that age range, I think it is an absolute, like, amazing conversation opener, and I would highly recommend it.
Thank you. How does the youth numbers compare to adults? I think the rise of anxiety is across generations and is a serious social issue.
Yeah, I don't have specific stats, but I would say everything I read about adults is on pace with students. I mean, we're seeing the same categories are the same for adults as well.
Is there any info yet on how kinship families are doing during COVID versus traditional family dynamics?
Define kinship.
So Abby, do you want to, this is your question, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I was talking with a variety of different senior centers about kinship dynamics where they're either the grandparents are helping take care of the kids or an aunt or an uncle are helping because something has happened where the original parents aren't really in charge of taking care of the kids.
Yeah, I would love to know that. I don't have any stats on that, but that is a really great question. I will do some research. Yeah, I don't know. It would be fascinating to find out. I can just speak anecdotally from friends that do have that dynamic. They're doing really well. They're doing really well with that extra support for sure.
Let's see. Okay, Mark's saying talk to Rita at Mesa Public Schools. And Mark, you wanted to make an introduction?
Sure. Hang on a second. Yeah, I want to introduce a couple people. Harmony Nelson, who I think many of you know, helps us with our community impact work. And Rochelle Crespo has just come on to join us working on our teen suicide initiative. She put a list up about Sources of Strength, which is a program in town. But I just want you to know those two folks, because we are also in partnership with the chamber, and anyone else who wants to be in partnership, we're working to do as much as we can to help kids out. We deal a lot with kinship families and foster families and aging out foster kids. All of those groups of people are in severe trouble.
And I just want to say that Harmony and I and Mark, with his support, worked on a $750,000 grant to confront this issue, and we're hoping to find out today if we got it. So that would be amazing. So yes, thank you so much for your support from Mesa United Way. And Abby was part of that too. She got a support letter from Senator McSally. So I'm hoping that application even stronger.
Abby, Michelle, do you guys have anything that you want to add? Anything from the senator's offices? Michelle?
The biggest update is still working on the CR, probably not a new COVID plan coming through before the election and unclear after the election. So right now the focus in the Senate is on funding the government through hopefully December 11th.
Okay.
And of course, the Supreme Court nominee.
There is that.
That minor detail.
Abby?
Yeah, that's pretty much our update also. But on this topic, making a national suicide hotline number of 988 is very much in the process of happening with the FEC. So hopefully by the next time we have this conversation a year from now, we're talking about promoting 988. And I know the senator was really active on that. So some good news to end this conversation.
Great. I think we have a question from Lori Marsh.
Good morning, everyone. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and one thing that I have found in this time, as she's here, that I have found is where she is learning her emotions and can express some of them. One thing that she still is feeling is very alone. So even though we have dad and mom here and now a dog, she is still doing her work by herself in another room. and mom is here doing work. And so it might seem like we're accessible, but we're really not because of those other commitments that we're still trying to do. So I can see the challenges in her, even at this young age, for her coming out saying, I feel alone, even when she's in a house, full of people.
Thanks. Rochelle, did you want to talk about sources of strength, or I know you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know Katie's, if she had any experience or had any opinions on it. And then I had that other question, and then I have another question, but I don't want to hog the question light, so I'll just
go ahead
now.
Yeah, can you repeat your question?
So I put in the chat, Sources of Strength is a program that's specifically focused on that area of what you were saying. There needs to be more focus upstream on helping kids before they reach crisis, helping them when they're just in distress. And Sources of Strength focuses on giving them those tools on how to support each other and how to deal with those issues. Do you have any thoughts on that program, or do you have any experience with it?
I love that program. Community Bridges, Natalia Chimbo Andrade, who is also an amazing advocate, actually teaches that in the Mesa public schools and in other school districts as well. It's one of my favorite evidence-based programs, so I'd highly recommend going through the training. It's free. I think they're now doing like virtual trainings, obviously online too. So I'm a huge fan of it. There's Safe Talk, QPR, and Sources of Strength. I'd love to see our school districts train our kids in Sources of Strength. Right now it's training for adults. And that's where we're really, again, no offense, but missing the mark that peer-to-peer support, kids want support from each other. That's what they're doing online with social media, as we all know. Like, that's how they're supporting each other. They just need the skills on what to do if somebody says this, like instead of freaking out, shutting down, or not telling anybody, like how they still don't know how the difference between telling on somebody and a safety issue. We've made it like so taboo to report, and snitches still get stitches, that programs like Sources of Strength, if it were student-based, would teach the kids that this is a safety issue and here's who to report to. The kicker is, if an adult hasn't been trained in Sources of Strength and is afraid of the word suicide or even the thought of suicide, and a kiddo is coming forward, the system doesn't work, right? So we have to have trained adults and trained students. ASU has an amazing program called Devils for Devils that they're using, that's peer-to-peer support, and they're starting to infiltrate into the high schools and create programs that are peer-to-peer support led models like that. So yeah, Sources of Strength is an excellent program if you ever get a chance to be trained in it.
Sherry had a friend about books or resources that you'd recommend for teens to build self-esteem, coping, friendships.
So there's a brand new book out. Well, let me go down my list, and I will email this too because there's so many good ones. But if you have girls, the book Untangled is excellent. The book Under Pressure, same author, excellent. So that's all about really truly what these girls are up against these days. Boys, my favorite boy books, Saving Our Sons and Decoding Boys, DECODING, Decoding Boys. Excellent references. On the front of like books for them, I will be honest, there's not a ton of resources out there that are like cool. There's like a lot of journals and things like that. But my favorite new book that is coming out this week is called A Year of Positivity for Teens. And it's by Katie Hurley, Hurley. It comes out next week, this week. Excellent reference. She's got like role playing and scripts and journaling, and it's really hip and cool. And kids actually have been her kind of, previewers and have recommended it as well. On the front of podcasts, Dr. Lisa D'Amour is my favorite podcaster about teens. Her podcast is called Ask Dr. Lisa, and she has put out about 8 different podcasts in the last few weeks. specifically about COVID, isolation, everything that Lori was just talking about, and how, you know, just tools and strategies for parents on helping your kids through this time. And she's just spot on, and she's easy to listen to. So I'd highly recommend that podcast as well.
Great.
And then lastly, on the front of the social media business, besides the Childhood 2.0 movie, you've probably seen or heard about The Social Dilemma. That's like a whole family watch on how big tech has pretty much hijacked our families. So that could be also a resource.
There's some info in chat. So if you guys want to just look at that, maybe you can download it. There's several different things that people have posted in there about books and resources.
I echo Mark's recommendation of the book Educated, especially for teenagers. It's really good.
Anybody have anything else? Mark, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Right before COVID started, we were getting ready to have another one of our forums. Unfortunately, we had one in December, and that was the last one. I think we need to talk about probably doing a virtual forum, Katey. I will say that this week I posted a handful of pictures with people wearing the shirts that we gave out in December, and I'm now in the shirt business. People are wanting to buy shirts, so if anybody is interested, just email me and we can coordinate. But this is the shirt. Okay, I know this is not. Okay, can you see it at all? No.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Save Lives. It's really cute. I'll attest. It's really cute.
There we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is very cool. It's a nice shirt that you actually would like to wear because it's soft, unlike some of the shirts that you get. But if you have, if you have any interest, just email me. I have some. Hi, Lori's daughter.
And on that, so I have some disappointing news. So One Gilbert is a task force that was started by Mayor Jen Daniels on youth suicide prevention. And so that was an initiative of the town. So Jen is no longer the mayor. And I'm just hearing rumblings that the task force, One Gilbert, probably won't be continuing under the next administration. So if any of you see or hear of grant funding or resources, or Mesa wants to be a part of starting something, we were on such a great track with a company called Authentic Connections that does all sorts of surveying and resiliency training. So we had scheduled to survey all of the 6th through 12th graders in the town of Gilbert on youth mental health and what they needed from us. So that unfortunately probably is not going to happen. And we were going to take that data, obviously, and create programs and services. So if you're all out in the big world and need any opportunities or anything to start it in Mesa, I would love for that to happen. So.